Developed by Crystal Dynamics of Gex fame and published by Eidos Interactive that nobody's probably ever heard of, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver was released in 1999 for the Sony PlayStation and PC, and ported to the Sega Dreamcast in 2000. While there are noticeable graphical differences between the three, I'm only going to focus on the PlayStation version, as this is the version I'm most familiar with. Whenever you hear that sound, you know you're in for a good time. Let me just start by saying that if you like vampires, this is definitely a must-have game with its own unique mythology. The series is comprised of 5 games beginning with Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, and culminating in Legacy of Kain Defiance. Personally, I would love to see this franchise re-emerge on a current-gen console or in an HD remaster at the least. At Blood Omen's end, Kain has the choice of sacrificing himself to ensure that vampires become extinct, or simply taking over the world. Spoilers, he chose the latter. The game begins 1500 years after the events of Blood Omen. Kain has repopulated the vampire race and now rules Nosgoth. The opening cinematic is narrated by Kain's former lieutenant Raziel, who tells of his betrayal, execution, and ultimate resurrection. The opening shows that Kain has Raziel killed because he was the first vampire to grow wings. Kain doesn't like this, as he sees it as a threat to his power. Raziel's wings are torn off and he is cast into a whirlpool to die. His body destroyed, Raziel finds that he still somehow exists as a wraith in the spectral plane. Here he meets the Elder God, who wishes to use Raziel as an instrument to destroy Kain and restore order to Nosgoth. It is revealed that Raziel has returned after an undisclosed amount of time, during which Nosgoth has fallen into ruin. The Elder God explains that the creation of vampires traps souls that cannot continue their journey through the Wheel of Fate. With so many souls trapped, the land has become unstable and racked with cataclysms. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver is definitely one of my favorite games for the original PlayStation. It's one of those games that, when I first read about it in gaming magazines, I knew I had to run out and get it as soon as it came out. I have a lot of fond memories of staying up late to finish this game, and I'm happy to say that having revisited it recently, for me, it still holds up. While in the spectral realm, you can defeat other specters and devour them to renew your own strength. Once you have filled the life coil completely, you can become corporeal again. Once you are solid, you can travel to areas that were previously closed off to you. When you fight corporeal enemies, as you take damage, the life coil depletes. Once it is empty, you re-enter the spectral realm, leaving behind any items you may have been carrying at the time. Scattered throughout the land are special teleportation rooms that give you the option to transport instantly to another area, and this can be pretty useful because otherwise you're going to be doing a lot of backtracking. Nothing's worse than getting to an interesting new area and then losing your corporeal form. One of the great things about this game, though, is that you can never really die. If you lose all of your spectral energy, you will simply re-emerge at the start of the game and have to work your way back. The trek can be shortened by using the transporters, though, if you can memorize the sigil of the clan whose territory you are in. I love the settings and the atmosphere of this game. The environments are all sufficiently creepy and sometimes Giger-esque with their bizarrely organic architecture. You never know when an enemy may be lurking just around the corner. At times you can hear the noises of enemies you can't see, and it really sets you on edge, especially if you are low on health and in need of a save point. Your gameplay is non-linear, and you can go pretty much anywhere once you have collected enough abilities. A large portion of your quest is finding and defeating Raziel's vampire brothers, who have all evolved into new monstrous forms. Most of the bosses in the game are pretty large, and you will have to figure out how to defeat them in inventive ways, usually involving traps, as your physical attacks won't damage them at all. One of my favorite boss battles is against Rahab, who gets ground up into a giant bloody mess. After defeating a boss, you devour his soul and gain a new ability. After battling Kain for the first time, he attempts to use the Soul Reaver against you, but the sword shatters. Kain retreats and you become joined with a spectral form of the Soul Reaver. You can now use it at any time in the spectral realm, but you will need full health to use it in the material world. Throughout the game, you will also encounter humans. You can choose to attack them, but it's smarter if you don't. Once they see that you are killing vampires, they view you as a savior, and they will allow you to drink small portions of soul from them. If you attack them, however, you won't be able to get them back on your side. Some humans are actually vampire worshippers who see the vampires as masters. They will treat you as an enemy no matter what you do. Time works differently in the spectral realm as well. One part of the game requires you to open a door that you are not given sufficient time to pass through in the material plane. You must open the door, then quickly shift to the spectral plane to go through it before returning to the material plane to continue. Which brings us to puzzles. This may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I've always considered the puzzles to be a part of the exploration. Some puzzles simply require you to move a platform to reach an area, whereas others give you three-dimensional puzzles in the form of blocks that must be turned in a certain order and fitted into a groove before you can escape the room, often dropping enemies to battle at the same time. One element of this game that may turn some people off is the puzzle-solving element, and it can take a minute. Personally, I don't mind this aspect of the game as it mixes things up a bit from the hack-and-slash gameplay. One of the big selling points of the game when it was initially being advertised was the ability to impale your enemies, and it's definitely satisfying. There are several different spears you can do this with, and you can even pull metal bars off of door frames to use as a spear. Torches can be used to beat your enemies back with, and once they are dazed, you can set them on fire. You can also pick up a dazed enemy and throw them either onto spikes, into the sunlight, or into water to defeat them. Since he no longer has the use of his wings, Raziel cannot fly, but he can extend his jumping range by taking hold of his ruined wings and leaping to glide across small distances. You will later gain the ability to pass the Soul Reaver through fire to create the Fire Reaver.
Once baptized in this primordial flame, the blade may be imbued with fire at any future time.
This combined with the telekinesis ability will allow you to charge and fire flame projectiles. Scattered throughout the game are various glyph artifacts that you can use for attacking multiple enemies at once. They're not necessary to complete the game, however.
Once acquired, these glyphs empower you with elemental lore. Each spell exacts a sacrifice of energy, however. Use them sparingly and wisely.
Okay, so this happens. I don't know. Spider, vampire, monster things need to stay in shape too, I guess. I don't know what it is with these spider things, but for some reason they seem to glitch more than anything else in the game. I want to look away, but I can't. He just keeps going. Look at this guy. He's just stuck there, not doing anything, not acknowledging me, not moving at all. He's just a part of the background now. And then there's this guy. I don't even know what the hell killed him. Was it the block? Because this would be the only time in the game when this happens. So anyway, Captain Kicking It over here is still just hanging out and then, oh shit! Tricksy bastards. Moving on. One thing that stands out in this game is the terrific dialogue and voice acting. Late actor Tony Jay, voice of the Elder God, was also the voice of Megabyte in Reboot and the Supreme Being in Time Bandits.
My format, virus, return what you have stolen from me.
Become my Soul Reaver, my angel of death.
Top Cow even published a single-issue prequel comic. In this story, Raziel feeds off of what he thinks is a human woman, but is in fact a messenger from the Elder God. She attempts to warn him of his future, but he kills her and goes about his business, leading into the intro of the game. So, with games, comics, toys...
Wait a minute. Toys?
I want that.
Oh. Never mind. According to series director Amy Hennig, Soul Reaver actually started life as a game called Shifter that was unrelated to Blood Omen. When Crystal Dynamics acquired the rights to continue the series, Shifter was adapted into a sequel. The soundtrack was composed by Kurt Harland of the synthpop group Information Society. The main theme is the instrumental version of the song Ozar Midrashim that originally appeared on the album Don't Be Afraid. Needless to say, it sets an appropriately dark and foreboding tone. Graphically, this game may seem a bit blocky by today's standards, but I consider this one of the best looking games for the original PlayStation, and I feel the overall presentation has stood the test of time. With an engaging fantasy storyline, complex characters with great voice acting, an awesome soundtrack, and fun gameplay, Crystal Dynamics was firing on all cylinders with this game. Suffice it to say, I recommend it.
And that's Soul Reaver. Hopefully someday Raziel will return, or maybe we could even possibly get an HD remaster on a current-gen console. Tune in next time when we discuss alien technology.
He just keeps going.